Hello, I'm Jace, and I'm here to show you a small Python game that I made. I basically went into Python and made a simple version of Brick Breaker, and I'm here. First, I'll start with showing it run. I made it to where you can click on a paddle on the bottom, and it'll stay clicked onto it, and it'll bounce off the top wall, right wall, and left wall accordingly, and the paddle and all the bricks as it hits them. And also if it hits the bottom wall, you lose will display across the screen. And once you get all the bricks to disappear, it'll display you win. And let's go through the code. First, up at the top, I have scene.range equals 5, which basically makes the screen arrange from -5 to 5 in the X direction and the Y direction. Next here I have several lines of code which just display and make the ball in the bricks and the paddle for the game. Here I have a few variables that I use later on, which is just for the velocity and direction of the ball, so I can kind of keep track of it. Next I have the functions defined, and these are all to help with grabbing the ball for when the mouse click, and not to grab the ball, but to grab the paddle. And I have a few of them commented out because basically it's to where I can just click on it once and it'll stay clicked on and locked on to the paddle. And also at first I didn't mean to do this, but for some reason whenever I would click and unclick the paddle, a bunch of errors would display in the back of the game, even though the game would still run perfectly fine. But once I did this to where it won't let you unclick it, it made the errors go away, and it was kind of easier to control the game. The next part I have is where I just ball.velocity equals vector ball xv comma ball yv comma 0, which is just for establish a velocity in the x and y direction, but it doesn't make the ball move yet. I also have a few true false statements for when the bricks get hit to where they'll break. Alright, here is the main loop of the game, or really the only loop that runs the entire game. I have it giving a rate of 100, which rate is just for the speed. And I have ball.pos equals ball.pos plus ball.velocity times dt, which just gives movement to the ball in a certain direction. Next, I have a bunch of if statements, and the first 5 are all for the bricks, to where if the ball hits a brick, it'll break. I have it set up to where if the ball reaches the brick's Y position, and if it's between the brick's left end and right end, and if the brick isn't broken yet, which I have that set to brick broke equals true. I have that for all 5 of the bricks, to where it'll change the brick broke to false. Changes the ball velocity to where it'll fly in a different direction after it hits the brick, and it changes the color to black to where it'll disappear, and the changing the brick broke to false makes it to where the ball can just go through that same position again without it bouncing off a brick. And I have that done for all 5 of the bricks here. Next I have to where if the ball hits the paddle, it'll bounce off. No matter what, the ball's gonna bounce in the positive Y direction because it's always gonna bounce up from the paddle. And I have it set up to where depending on which direction it approaches and bounces off the paddle, it'll bounce in the opposite direction. The first one here is to where if it comes in and approaches from the left, it'll have the ball bounce and it'll keep going as if it was still approaching from the left in the positive X direction. And the next 2 are the same, to where if it approached from the right instead, it'll bounce off and keep going in that same direction. Next I have to where if the ball.pos.y is greater than -4.9, this is for just if it basically hits the bottom of the screen, it'll display you lose. The next 3 lines of code here are all for the top wall, to where if it hits the top wall, no matter what, it's going to bounce back down in a negative Y direction. And depending on what direction it came in from the wall, it'll bounce in the opposite direction accordingly. And I also have that same thing for the right wall and left wall, to where for the right wall, no matter what, it's going to bounce back in a negative X direction. And depending on which way, what angle, up or down, that the ball hit the right wall, it'll bounce in the opposite direction. And I have the same exact thing for the left wall, except for that the left wall will always bounce in a positive X direction. And also at the very bottom, I have it to where once all the bricks are broken, it'll display you win on the screen. And also I use the ball direction right and ball direction up and ball XV and ball XYV, kind of just to help me keep track of what angle the ball's hitting for the directions, so I know for whatever angle it hits at, I can set it up to where it'll bounce back up or down or left or right accordingly to how it should. And also, one thing I had tried to do up here with all the bricks, first I tried to make it into an array to where it would kind of have all the bricks as the same width, height, and just have them at a different position about one apart from each other. But I couldn't actually get it to work. I was trying to figure out a way to get it to where it would check and see each time if any of the bricks got hit, but I couldn't actually figure out how to do that to where it would check to see in between each brick's position. So I kind of just gave up and put in 5 bricks just on my own. And if anybody actually knows a way, some kind of feedback would be appreciated to get that to work. And also any feedback from up here to where I had it with the mouse just clicking and staying locked on. I mean, it's more convenient if it stays locked on or locked in place with the paddle, but I am curious on why it would keep giving me errors if I didn't have them commented out. Thank you.